I hope you all had a wonderful rest and sleep last night, and you're all ready to go again early this morning at 9. It is now 9:10. I would like to first of all welcome everybody back, and also this morning we have a presentation. We have Canon Lee Curtis from the Diocese of Rio Grande who is here with us, and he is going to share with us his experience here in Denenficaya. He's been working with us for getting our mission statement in place. We started this mission statement discernment back in February, and then so here we are in May. We did the visits to the 3 regions and sat with congregations in each of the regions, and so here we are going to find out what his findings are and experience, and also will share with us what our next steps is going to be and what the goal, the end goal is. And so welcome Reverend Canon Lee Curtis. So, welcome.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes.
If I'm tied to a podium, I lose my mind, and so I'll be roving. I hate Cornelia, and it's okay. I have interchangeable first and last names, so Lee Curtis, Curtis Lee, however it comes, it's all good. So this morning, I want to take some time to start with. We will talk about what we've been seeing in the conversations, but I want to go back to the beginning of the process and share some of the perspective about when we're talking about a mission statement, what it is that we're talking about, or at least what it is that I think we're starting to come to here in Convocation. So when we think of a mission statement, like many things, it's gone through kind of the mission statement around the Episcopal Church and around the world broadly has gone through kind of phases of development. You can tell more or less when a mission statement was written by how it was written. And so really kicking off in the 90s, we have these kind of larger multi-step, we commit to, we commit to 1, 2, 3, 4, with some kind of underpinning of what those 4 things were. So here in the area of mission in 1995, you committed to be rooted in the values of the Dene, formed by the love of God, grounded in Dene tradition, and committed to strengthening relationship between God and the community. In 2012, and here we see again the kind of shift in how we think about this, the mission statement of the Navajo land of ECN was to address the spiritual, social, and economic needs of Navajo and other Native peoples through worship, education, training, and social engagement. In both of those statements, we start off, and this is common with mission statements, we start off with what we do. They're very active verbs enlaced through that whole thing. And what we're starting to see with this idea of a mission statement, how many of y'all wear that 2012 mission statement on your sleeve? It just lays it on your heart. Exactly. What we're finding, though, in terms of the mission statements that come through the church and where we are now, broadly, even outside of the church, is that statements that start from who we are, rather than what we do, are the statements that tend to have a life outside of a resolution, either of a council or of a congregation. And if we think about mission itself, we're going to unpack that for a little bit. If we think about mission itself, we broadly in the church, think about it in terms of where we go, what we do, and how we do it. Mission comes out of a Latin root which essentially means to send, to launch, to throw. If you go back all the way to the Sanskrit root, it means to fight. And what we can miss in that is who is on this side of what is being sent, of what's being put out. This last year, I've had the privilege to coach a 9 and 10-year-old girls soccer team. Don't ask me how I got into it. I'm really thankful that I did, though. I can tell you by watching the kick, without even looking at the girl, just watching the ball roll by, I can tell you who kicked it. And when we think about something that encapsulates who we are as the people of God in Convocation, that is the same kind of energy that I think we want, that in seeing what we do, who we are becomes palpably present. The word mission did not appear in the lexicon of any church organization until the 1590s. And it was the Jesuits who invented it. The Jesuits who also in the 1590s and early 1600s were having it out with broader church organizations about the nature of what it meant to be in and among people. So much so that in the 16th century, the Jesuits were expelled from the Americas for looking too much like the people they were serving. There were revolts in South America because they kicked the Jesuits out. That's the kind of energy we want to bring to a statement, even as simple and as perfunctory as a mission statement might seem. And so, what we've done, and again, I'm hugely thankful to Cornelia and Bishop Eisner for the invitation to do this work, is to listen deeply, and to do our best to listen deeply in a way that makes sense here. So beginning in February, we sat down with your ECN Council via Zoom and started off this process of listening. And all we have done is ask folks to introduce themselves and ask them one question. What does it mean to be Dene and an Episcopalian? And you might not be surprised to know that that question has easily filled up a 2.5-hour meeting every time. What we've found is within the introduction, within the traditional introduction in Dene Bazad, there is a mountain of information that already exists for us in a way that is framed by Dene culture and Dene language. And so those introductions every time lead us to immediately a deeper understanding of who we are in the room. And for those of you who aren't familiar, and I'm grateful to Father Michael Drinkwater for this, and I'll try to muddle through it, but the introduction is something that I have seen other parts of the church kind of hold out without understanding the significance of it. And so for those of you, if you haven't heard it translated before, it walks you through. Well, Lee Curtis initially. Good morning, my friends, my family. I'm Lee Curtis. And this is how I'm a human. My maternal grandmother is from Scotland. My paternal grandmother is from Her people are from somewhere. My paternal grandmother is from Ireland, and my paternal grandfather's people are from France. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings, and I currently live in El Paso, Texas with my wife and 2 sons. I was born in Cape Canaveral, and that's how I am who I am. And that sense there, that and contained in that, this is how I am who I am, is the energy that's become palpable in every space that we've been in. This is how I am a human. This is how I am who I am. And so all we've had to do in each of these meetings, and all we've intended to do, is to set out to introduce ourselves and ask that simple question of what it means to be Dene and Episcopal. And we've had 4 main themes come from that. I didn't pick 4. I'm not aiming for 4 intentionally, but I'm very happy we landed on 4. What has been palpable in every conversation, first and foremost, is the idea of the way. Of the Jesus way meeting the Convocation. We've heard it, and we've heard it articulated both ways. We've heard in some of our missions the idea of the Convocation being prominent. We've had some members of the community articulate it as Rojoje. I know there is a conversation around the meetings and what's carried in those words. I would encourage us to have that conversation as part of this discernment. But what is palpable in every one of those spaces is this idea of a walking alongside of the Jesus way and a way of being today. Whether it's in parallel, which is the language that we heard here in our conversation at the San Juan Mission, or the idea of the priest and the medicine man walking in line together, which is what we heard in the Utah area region, or if it's the idea of bringing together disparate identities into a way that produces a wholeness, which is what was kind of floating around in Fort Defiance. All of those ways are unique to the regions that we're in, but they're articulations of similar thought. That there is a way that ECN is finding to hold the Jesus way and the Dene way of being together in a way that that produces results that are interesting that we'll talk about later. I wouldn't say produces results, but gives us a deep kind of grounding in identity. The second theme that came through the conversations that we had was the idea of care. And I know that idea, that word, contains a multitude of phrases, but the idea of kinship, a relationship, a family, and everything that, again, is contained in that term. We heard the word king in every gathering, even outside of the introduction. And I will note, and again, I owe this to Father Michael Drinkwater, and I hate that he can't be here. For those of you who don't know, Michael Drinkwater is a priest in the Diocese of the Rio Grande, who has done master's level work. Well, he has his master's from the University of New Mexico in Athabascan languages, and he recently finished completing a National Science Foundation grant on Hickory Apache language restoration. And so I've been hugely blessed to do this work with him. As he's helped me he's helped me to understand the depths of what I might have missed otherwise. But within the idea of going back to relationship, the other thing I will note, and this is just interesting, there were 2 plans mentioned that we only heard one time. There is a deep connection and a deep family tie in ECN that goes beyond our understanding of Billy on my family. And so again, unpacking that, sitting with this idea of what is contained in the idea of relationship and faith is going to be hugely important, and we hope to set the groundwork to have that conversation. The other theme that came through in each of the conversations was that of service. Of service. Every one of our missions and every one of our congregations in ECN had a story about a ministry, a program, an educational offering that connected deeply to not just the mission itself, but to the wider community. Here at the San Juan Mission, well, not just here at the San Juan Mission, at every one of our congregation, of the missions that we visited, somebody in the room had been born on property at that mission. And so there was a sense of life actually being generated in that space. But even then, here we talk about the connections with the clinic. In Utah, we hear about the connections with the community that came up around St. Christopher's. Right? A community that was gathered because the mission existed. And in Arizona, again, we hear the work of the orphanage, the work of Ms. Hardy, Deacon Hardy. This idea of service, of doing something actively for the community is ingrained in the heart of who ECN is. And so starting to articulate the ways that that has connected us and grounded us and can move us into the future are going to be huge. We do also, in the fourth theme that came through in all of our spaces was healing. Was healing. And that was articulated simultaneously as kind of healing, as medicine, as maintaining medicine, preserving it. But we've also seen it articulated in different ways. Recovery was a theme that ran through under that kind of category of healing. There are also pieces within our own communities that need to be healed kind of inside the scope. We heard stories of experiences where the missions, even though we did not operate boarding schools here, the missions were instrumental in the experiences that people had being sent to boarding schools. And we've heard the kind of pain and loss that came through that. In some cases, those boarding school experiences, it tends to be on the New Mexico side, were generally positive. In others, they very much were not. And I will note the traditional introductions and the amount of Dene Mazad that was spoken in the room directly related to the boarding school experiences of the people who were in that room. And so again, within that healing, there's a way that we offer healing to the wider community, but healing that still needs to occur within ourselves and within our histories. And so with that, I have not written your mission statement for you. All I'm presenting are some things. Again, there is a depth behind each one of these themes that has presented, and these are just 4 kind of spotlights that Michael and I are encouraging your council to look at and discern, and starting to address who we see is. So in terms of, I'll stop right there. I know I've said a lot, but are there, I want to make sure that clock's right. I've been burned by that before. Okay, that clock is right. So I want to stop right there. We'll talk process and some pieces here in a minute, but I do want to take about 5, maybe 10 minutes for any questions or comments that we might have about anything I've said so far. Yes, ma'am?
Did you cover all age ranges on your internet?
We did, yes, ma'am. So I believe we did have a good showing of elders. We also had some one-on-one time with one particular youth, but all age ranges were represented in each of the meetings.
How were the people selected? The ones that you come to?
We just said y'all come. So we had group meetings here at the San Juan Mission, at St. Christopher's, and at Good Shepherd in Fort Defiance. And those were just open ties to the community. We had some folks come in via Zoom to join us for those meetings. The others were all held in person, and we had at least a dozen people in each room. Oh, okay. Sorry.
How will we, Mission Statement be like to repeat that concerning what would be with connecting together?
So
Please repeat the question.
yeah, so the question was how will the ideas of the mission statement connect together? What's the kind of main idea of the mission statement? Moving into the process just a little bit, what I'm working on right now, I recorded every one of those sessions. And so I've got about 9 hours, give or take, worth of transcripts. I was hoping in this world of AI that the AI would generate a workable transcript, and it didn't. So I've had to go through and kind of manually, and I'm still, this has set the process back a little bit to manually go through and generate those transcripts. What your council will be getting are the recordings of each of the sessions and the transcripts of each of the sessions, as well as some, again, just kind of overview notes of observations that Father Michael Drinkwater and I have made. Those notes really are just, these are our impressions, but the work of discerning this statement is fundamentally the work of the ECN Council. And finding that process forward. So what I'm going to do is get them all of the information, and then I think the plan right now is for us to meet in August, at the August meeting, and to figure out what the next steps need to be. This is one of those things like, one of the things that I deeply love and hope that we hold in this is in each of the conversations that we had, they went until they were done. They went until they were done. And so my hope is that this process, again, would go until it's done. There are some pieces that have come out of these meetings, some themes that it's clear every mission in ECN and people of ECN hold deeply and together with different ways of describing it. And so finding that is going to be crucial, and I will not do, I can't do that work, but I'll help the council in that process. But I will say though, just some snapshot, and correct me if I'm wrong in anything I say. There is still kind of a binary identity that can exist that we certainly want to avoid as we're developing these things. And we heard it articulated directly in one of the meetings. The phrase that sticks out in my head is "Dene go bilagar." Dene and Anglo, although I prefer at Anglo a little bit. The one thing I'll say is I would hope for a corrective to that. I do think the dualism is much more Billigana than it is today. And so again, moving past those pieces and recognizing the healing, again, under that kind of fourth category, the healing that needs to occur within the church, within the individual missions, within the wider church, and certainly Bishop Palmer's experience in Lambeth, that story hangs heavy in a lot of our spaces. So I will say, with that, the work in this space at this time, in my mind, is to again go back and listen deeply to what is contained, by and large, within the introductions that were given, but also that sense of what it means to be Dene and an Episcopalian. And so, like I said, we'll be going as soon as I can get these transcripts done, which is taking me much longer than I anticipated. We'll have those to council, we'll consider them at we'll talk about them at the August meeting, and then set another process. I have no presuppositions as to timeline, and I've encouraged council not to have any presuppositions as to timeline as well, because there are some pieces contained in what we've heard in all of these meetings that need time to be talked through and thought through. Yes, ma'am. Right, absolutely.
Two different school creations.
Thank you, Shirley. So what Shirley was saying was that conflict, moving through that same conflict is the way that we can get to kind of spiritual growth and strategy. And I will end with just one note, because I know. Oh, sorry, Bishop. When bishops start pacing the halls, I get nervous.
No. I was wanting Ann to say something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you've seen me around, you know that I'm Bishop Meisner's spouse. I would, also was asked by the standing committee, because I do Episcopal election consulting, to help ECM with the process, God willing, and the saints providing, that will be soon electing their own bishop. You will soon be electing your own bishop. And I've had to take a sort of leave of absence from that for a year, because I'm the presiding bishop's canon, and we need to get him to the finish line. And so that's my work right now. So, but it's fitting, so, I mean, it's kind of a God thing. It's fitting so nicely with the timing of what's happening here and moving the process through General Convention. So you may recall I was with that group that went around from one of the joint standing committees of General Convention. They were doing some things, but I have to say that the work Lee is doing with you and the listening that you are doing together with one another is really wonderful work, and it's generative work. It's like running a rototiller over the soil before you plant your garden, so that you turn up the soil and you get the good earth coming up and break up the clods that are getting in the way, and throw out the rocks, and then you have a more gentle field to do the planting. And so when it comes time, this work of thinking about the mission statement and then whatever comes next is actually work you're doing in the process for finding the next bishop for Navajo. And when we come to the time for that piece of work to begin, this will shorten the length of time that the whole thing takes, because you're already doing the work of thinking through really core pieces that have to be thought through when you're looking for a bishop. Who are we? And what are we called to do in this rich identity of being both Dining and Episcopal? So I just want you to know how great this work is that Lee is doing, and how useful it will be to all of us as we move into the phase of finding your next bishop. And I'm grateful, and I want you to know that.
So, yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you would be able to go to our guys for this. Read the conversation between our bishops and as he stated, for God is he intended to do as a bishop for his he did ask for that as bishop. This is party that I'm not too sure, but he did all the laws. So you might want to go to our guys. That question was asked, and there was a response, and just like yours, it was that what we wanted to accomplish during this term as bishop. So we already had a general vision for PCA, and I was beginning to work on that. Accomplish that. But you might want to go to our guys. Mapped out for this. And so I'm going to share that with us. And I'll get an question session that was asked.
So please.
Yeah, you might speak later as far as overall mission statement.
That's an excellent thought. Thank you. Well, it was, the suggestion was to go to the archives and find a conversation between Bishop Plummer and the House of Bishops about core values that he intended to make the center of his ministry. That's basically, and what I was going to do was, I've approached the archives, asking the Episcopal Church archives for certain foundational documents, and gotten some. But I know there are many things in boxes or on shelves or lying around. We don't have any way of accessing these things, these precious things, in a systematic way. So please, 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 if you've got something that looks like it might be useful, if you know where something is that looks like it might be useful, please help us assemble this material. It would be so helpful to have our written history handy as we do this work. Thank you.
Do you know approximately when that was? What year that was?
Conversation.
Yeah. In the 80s? Yeah, if it's the House of Bishops minutes usually are easier to get. The issue we don't have an archivist nationally, and the archives have been in flux. And so again, if any of you have that piece of paper that you picked up one day from Good Shepherd, take pictures of it and send it to Bishop or Cornelia. Those things can be really, really hugely helpful. And thank you for that recommendation. I'll do my best to look. So as we get towards time, I have one closing thought. One piece I want to reiterate, and then just one closing thought. First of all, again, I want to be clear. council's purview is the mission statement. What Father Michael and I have done is simply to go around and ask people to introduce themselves, ask about what it means to be Dene and Episcopalian, and then to listen. And that's been an amazing gift. It's been an amazing gift. What I named to you right now, the kind of 4 themes, are not directions that I am recommending that ECN goes in this. Those are 4 areas that, in my mind, generate deep questions that are important to articulating who ECN is today and who, God willing, and in short order, the Diocese of Navajo-Land or the Diocese of Dene is. Right? So, those are, treat them as 4 places, 4 themes that I think are worth investigating more. And I know the conversations that will come through that will be generative. The other piece too is just it's something to be mindful of for all of us. I just want to end with a story. So when we talk about there's a terminology within the church, and particularly in this part of the world, we use Dene, Hispanic, Anglo to represent the new arrivals. We talk about, we translate East Coast binaries sometimes too when we come from the East Coast. What we want to be clear about in articulating who we are is to do so in a way that, and this is really the trick of this, that we deeply understand and resonate with, that is not, that the wider world can understand. So, for example, down in El Paso, we're 85% Hispanic of Mexican descent. 80% of the Pasoans speak Spanish at home. There was one of our congregations, and Bishop Hunt tells the story. He was down there on pastoral visit, and he walked out front. And this is an Anglo-Catholic parish. An Anglo-Catholic parish meaning they have a high church expression of their identity. And a man from the neighborhood walked out, he saw the bishop out there, he's like, yeah, I've seen that church for years, but I've never gone in. And because I know that church isn't for me. And the bishop goes, why? He says, oh, well, it's an Anglo-Catholic church, which means it's a Catholic church for white people. Only slightly wrong. So again, when we talk about these internal markers, when we throw words out that we think we know, right? When we throw words out that we think we know, it is often an invitation, and I would extend that invitation, and we'll work with your council to make sure that this is the case, that we go deep behind those concepts to be able to articulate the identity and the work of ECN in a way that the wider church and the wider community can understand. There is a gift that you all have given and will continue to give to Nebuchadnezzar. And I wholeheartedly believe in the work that you're doing and the missio that God has given you. It's been a privilege to do this work with you. I look forward to continuing it in the future. Thank you all so much.
Canon of the Ordinary is one of the busiest jobs in the church. I was one 4 years before I became bishop in Northern California. And I just coasted for 13 years as bishop because I had great canons to the ordinary. The Bishop Hunt, the Diocese of Rio Grande has lent us their canon to the ordinary for this work. It's a wonderful gift. And there's more. He's on sabbatical. He's giving us his personal time as well. And so, I have a hunch. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it. Spend a little time with folks here, and it gets in your heart. Thank you. Clearly, you're doing this from a place in your heart, and we are so grateful. Thank you.